Welcome to another episode of Wisdom on the Front Porch. And on my front porch today, though it looks like we're sharing the same room almost, is Alan. Alan, thank you so much for being on my show.
Gratitude first. Thank you for having me. And entrepreneurship is something that we mentioned. We talked a little bit off air here where I started entrepreneurship. Actually, believe it or not, back in 2012, I had a tiny company called Campus Libre with some of my college roommates. That didn't go super far, so we can get into that if you want. But my real entrepreneurial journey, for lack of better phrasing, started 10 years ago. And I told you off air that it's both amazing and deeply meaningful and also atrocious. So all at the
All
same
right.
time.
That's
And
my
so
kind
I
of
think that's a
show.
good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk a little bit about you. So you were in college. Um, what were you studying?
So I studied computer engineering. It's electrical and computer engineering. ECE is what it was called. And but I went down the computer engineering road, which is less electrical and more software.
Right. And you didn't go into computer chips and that kind of thing with Intel or some of the others?
I kind of sort of did. So
Oh,
I was
you
in
did.
corporate for, yeah. So I graduated with my bachelor's in 2011, master's in 2012, 2013. And then I was pretty much, I mean, I had a few internships during college. So iRobots, Sensata Technologies, Tyco Safety
Oh,
Products, Simplex Grinnell, all these different Lens Americas, all these different tech companies. After '08, there was a big increase when the economy was coming back, and I did
mhm.
very, very well because the truth is in the 21st century, not every company, but every tech company needs engineers, and there's just not enough
Right.
of us. So
Yeah.
I did very, very well in corporate, and then I got in a tough car accident when I was 26
Oh.
that really had me reevaluate my life, and that's when I went all in on my real entrepreneurial journey.
Well, let's talk about the one that didn't go so well. What did you call it?
Oh yeah. So way back in 2012, 2011, 2012, I had a company called Campus Libre,
Okay.
and it
About
was a
books?
yes, yeah, exactly, yeah. So it was a campus-specific Craigslist for textbooks, and
Okay.
then we were going to expand into other things. It was going to be sort of like a Craigslist for all kinds of things, sofa, but for colleges, for college students.
Okay. That sounds like a
And there
great
were
idea, actually.
Thank you. It was good, and we had a competitor called ULoop at the time that I think still might be around. I don't know, but we
Oh,
had four people that founded the company, three others, and I was the chief marketing officer, and the CEO and I had a falling out. But we were profitable out of the gate. We had a lot of unique users out
wow.
of the gate, and I think it could have really been something, but the CEO and the CMO, me as the CMO, had sort of diverging visions of the future, and that was one of the hardest conversations ever. It was 4 hours, and I cried a lot.
Oh,
And
wow.
I essentially got kicked off the company, and then the company went out of business. So
Was
um,
that pretty hard when you got kicked out like that?
two,
Especially when you saw it went out of business and it's like if you would have listened to me, you'd still be there or not. Maybe.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, that's a tough
I
question.
I do believe, and this is very scary to share on a public medium because Pat, Manu, and Ramsey are people who were from my past, and I still consider them friends in some ways. But Pat and I had diverging ideas. Pat was the
Hmm.
CEO. And my truth is that had I been at the helm, the company would have been successful. And I've come
Right.
to learn over decades now that some people are naturally more leadership oriented and some people
Hmm.
are not. And now I am the CEO of my own company and he is not, to my awareness. And I think we had a really good thing going and we had a hell of a team. But at the end of the day, not everyone is cut out for maybe working every single day. I haven't
Right.
taken a full day off in over 10 years now, and I don't intend on ever doing that. And I'm definitely that sort of type A, driven, set the pace kind of leader. And
Right.
I poured my mind, body, heart, and soul into that company, and it was only for a short time. But yeah, of course, I was heartbroken. And
Yeah.
but again, I think all entrepreneurs have failures like that, and they
Oh, yeah.
should. And it
At least that's what I've heard
hopefully
so far.
yeah, hopefully it drives you. Hopefully it drives you because drives you to be a better person, a better leader, and, drives you to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not anything against Pat or what's, this is the way business runs. Sometimes people get along, sometimes your ideas are going in different directions and you have to decide, you know, what to do at that point. And they're tough decisions. I'm sure it wasn't any easier for him than it was for you. And it makes it hard because you don't want to lose friendships either over it. But sometimes you have to take a stand and go on. And as entrepreneurs, we have to make that tough decision. And even though you went into the corporate world, it didn't stop you from being an entrepreneur leader.
Yeah, I think I was always going to end up as an entrepreneur eventually.
Mhm.
I do believe that to be true. And my career path early on, I never used to have the courage to share this because I feel like it's very weird. But I remember when I was very young, I was thinking about two different career paths, and I had a lot of different ones. It was, I had a lot of dreams. And one was I want to be a model and I want to be a pro gamer and all this different stuff. But the two really serious ones that I really wanted, that I really intended on, for lack of better phrasing, it was going to be lawyer, politician, president, or it was going to be
Oh,
engineer, MBA, CEO, like my hero at the time, Steve Jobs. And I've since reevaluated him as my hero. But I went with the engineer MBA one. And I do think, and now I have ended up the CEO of my own company, and that's
yeah,
been a hell of a journey. And I always say this to my team too. I say the moment I have to play the CEO card is the moment you should take it away, because it's not about that. And I want to earn that position every day by being the best leader I can be and setting the pace and making sure that I'm taking responsibility for the success or failure of the entire company and the entire team, while also holding the duality of, and the last thing I'll share about this, and I never fully agreed with this quote, which is no one achieves anything great alone. I always knew there was more to it. It's
mhm,
true and it's not true. Let me explain. No one achieves anything great alone, and one great leader can make a great team
mhm.
because they can set the pace.
Yeah,
And so I have a great team around me, and my goodness, I'm so grateful because I could not have gotten here without them.
right.
And and it's a duality. I also have to know that I'm also setting the pace and that I have to make sure that I'm not expecting of others what I'm not doing myself. And I will never, ever, ever not lead by example first, because
Good.
to me, that's the biggest issue in the world today is people
Hmm.
preaching things that they are not actually doing behind the scenes when no one's watching.
Right, right. And that does make a difference. Yeah, huge difference. I'm giving a talk tomorrow on leadership, and from all the people I've been studying, that seems to be the one thing that is consistent with great leaders is you take responsibility for the team no matter what, because you're the one in charge of it. You're the one in charge of your team. And the other one is you lead by example. I remember studying about John Maxwell last year. I think was the first year I really studied who he was. And in one book that I read of his is he says, you teach the person underneath of you, but you don't just leave them once you teach them. When they're teaching the person down there, you're still there letting him teach, but you're still there backing him up. And then that one will do the same with the one under him and so on. So you're still carrying everything around. And part of that too is if you ever leave the company because you retire or it's like I want to do something else, but I know I've got a great team who's going to keep going, they're still keeping the same values and the same ideas and the same vision because you've all taught each other down the line. So some companies, like as soon as the leader leaves, they just fall apart. Oh, we don't know what to do. Doing it that way, you keep it going until, somebody says, all right, that's enough. But I'm glad you brought that up. Now, you have a team, and I've been talking to a few entrepreneurs who have a team. And the question I have is, when did you know that you needed a team? When did you acquire a team? And how do you keep your team working together? How do you keep them nourished and just excited about the vision and the dream?
Well, the origin story of us getting a team is actually kind of funny. We had a studio, an in-person studio that we did for years, and we're now fully virtual. But Kevin and I would go to the studio, and we had this big whiteboard in the studio. And at one point, I call them elbows on your knees, face down moments, where you're just feeling defeated and you feel like I just can't keep operating. It's not I can't do it, because that, for a great leader, you always believe in the future and the
Right.
bigger, better, brighter future. But how in the hell are we going to keep doing this, basically? And so I had a elbows on knees moment with Kev in the studio. Just how the hell are we going to do this? And so we did a time audit. And a time audit is, there's 168 hours per week,
Okay.
24 times 7. And you sleep hopefully 8 to 9, maybe even 10, depending on how good a sleep you get. A lot of people say, sleep less, but I disagree with that strongly.
Yeah. Yeah.
The neuroscience backs me up so much on that.
Yeah, you do. You need at least your 8, if not more.
Yeah, you need good sleep. Good sleep is the foundation and the bedrock of my life. But anyways, so we did a time audit and we included sleep. And we found out that out of the 168 hours per week, we had a remaining 12 after we wrote out everything. And we wrote out every single thing we did. We wrote out
Wow.
everything we did. I'm talking fitness, I'm talking relationship, I'm talking sleep, audio editing, video editing, ba 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 ba. And the whole whiteboard was covered. And this is a big whiteboard. And we found out that we only have 12 hours remaining. And we went, okay, so we can't keep operating like this. And so the truth is, we didn't get a team until we absolutely freaking had to where we just could not grind ourselves into a fine pulp any more than we already had.
Right.
And a lot of people say work smart, not hard. And I actually think that's very ignorant. And let me explain why. A lot of times you don't work smart until after you work really hard.
That's true.
You will change when the pain is great enough, but the pain is usually not great enough until you beat your head against the wall a few times. So after beating our head against the wall for several months, we eventually were like, we can't do this alone anymore, and we have to get outside our comfort zone, and we have to hire. And we ended up actually posting into our own community at that point. And that's the cool thing about having a podcast, is that you can hire from within your own community. And so we got several team members. And then we also have an awesome Philippines team, and the director of Next Level Podcast Solutions, which is our production company, her name's Ron. And we hired Ron from Fiverr, or Kevin hired her at Fiverr or freelancer.com, one of those. And we eventually brought her on, and she's full-time now. And so
Oh, nice.
it's been amazing, and it's been scary too, because overhead for most companies, payroll is just outrageous. It's so much,
Right.
and people don't realize, and I get why, right? Unless you're a CFO of the company, you don't realize how much payroll is. It's a 17-person team. It's very hard to sustain the overhead. Like, people always say, oh, well, you have a $500,000 company, so you must be so rich. Listen, in order to make a $500,000, you usually have to spend $400,000. And so it's really important for people to understand that it's a snowball that gets bigger as you grow it, but everyone takes some off the snowball in order to sustain their life. And so
Right.
I think there's a lot of entitlement in business where they think, oh, I should be paid more and all this stuff, but it's just not a good strategy. Anyone who wants maximum results for minimal effort, you are going to lose in the long run, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned you have a partner. Did you always have a partner in business, or did that come in later?
So from the very beginning of my business, so after my car accident at 26, so my father passed away in a car accident when he was 28, when I was 2. So when I got in my car accident at 26, that was sort of my quarter life existential crisis, where I really went all in on my own company. And I had a company called Alan Lazaros LLC. It was what you'll never learn in school, but desperately need to know. And I wanted to bring personal development to the school systems, because to me, it makes no sense why we didn't learn about fitness and why we didn't learn about effective communication and why we didn't learn about finance and why we didn't learn about empathy
Absolutely.
and vulnerability and courage and communication and all these things that are wildly important. And when it comes
Yes.
to math and science and arithmetic and verbal, written, the school system does great. But when it comes to these practical self-improvement principles, I mean, whoa, just really dropped the ball. And so I wanted to bring personal development to the school systems, which was just feels impossible. I'm still going to work on it, but like it was hard. It's hard to get speeches at high schools and colleges with that tagline.
Yeah,
What you'll never learn in school, but desperately need to know.
that's
And
right.
so I almost went out of business with that. I had some success, but not much. And then I had a podcast called Conversations Change Lives, where I would interview an engineer and ask them pull back the curtain on what their life is really like so that these kids could make a decision that was actually informed. Because I
Right.
decided to be an engineer. You know, you're good at math, engineers make a lot of money, you should be an engineer. Like that was pretty much all I went on. And that was really ignorant in hindsight. So, but luckily I had the path of engineer, MBA,
Right.
CEO. But a lot of these kids, they go into engineering or they go into doctor, lawyer, whatever, but they don't really know what the day-to-day life is of a doctor or of an engineer or
Right.
of a lawyer. And so I wanted to pull back the curtain. So Kevin was my first guest. He was a foreman, and I interviewed him. And then he had me on. I was his first guest. He had a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast that I mentioned. And we eventually just teamed up and we had the worst titled podcast of all time, which was the Hyperconscious Podcast meets Conversations Change Lives podcast. And eventually, 20 or so episodes in, we went all in on Hyperconscious, and then we rebranded 400 or 500 episodes in, maybe even 700 episodes into Next Level University. And so it's a place where you go to reach your own unique potential. But to answer your original question, we were business partners kind of from the get. I think I had maybe a year and a half to 2 years on my own before I partnered with Kev.
Okay, that sounds good. Um, Before the show, we talked a little bit, and you said that he grew up without a father too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are, I know a few entrepreneurs who are like that. Les Brown talks about um, being on his own, and some of the others I know that I personally know who talk about, growing up in an orphanage or growing up like this. So, um, how does it affect you growing up without a dad? Do you think it gives you more drive to be successful? Um, does it still hold you back? Do you have limiting thoughts because of it? Um,
So
how
I
does,
was actually,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was on a therapy session with my therapist Carol earlier, and we were. I mean, I've rewatched the movie of my life over and over and over again, particularly in my 30s when I started doing therapy. But even before that, every year I really do, and I have a really, really good memory, photographic memory, and I can kind of watch the movie of my own life. I have most of the memories, not all of them, because I've blacked some of them out, but to answer your question, my fear going to therapy, and this won't resonate with everyone, okay? Um, for those of you who have a high ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, it's for those of you who had really rough, came up rough, and I'll just keep it there.
That's
I
right.
came up very, very, very rough. And some of it was good, and some of it was not.
Rough.
Statistically rough. Okay. That said, you have a level of drive that most people don't have. Most likely. Or, let me rephrase, if you believe in yourself a lot, you have a level of drive that most people don't have. Because when adversity strikes and you have high self-belief, you just get driven. It drives you. And when people doubt you, it drives you. It turns out if you don't have self-belief, that actually crumbles you. And
Okay.
usually there's escapism and alcohol or drugs or whatever. So adversity is your advantage only if you have high self-belief. If you have a low self-concept and low self-efficacy and low self-belief and low self-worth, and you have adversity is just pain and adversity.
Mhm.
And I didn't figure that out for a long time because these people that end up as these super achievers that had tough childhoods that you mentioned, What they don't know is that they have high self-belief. And so every
Right.
time adversity strikes, they actually get more driven. So yes, it drove the hell out of me, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a list of people in my head that I'll probably never share publicly, of people that just doubted me and treated me unjustly and bullied me. I mean, it was atrocious.
Right.
And I am alarmed and upset, and especially insecure men. I mean, what the hell? That said, thank you, because it drove the hell out of me. And now I've, achieved most of my dreams, not all of them, but many of them. And so my fear going to therapy was that I was going to lose my edge.
Oh,
I thought that if I healed,
oh,
that
that
I would
sounds like
lose my
legitimate fear, though.
yeah,
Yeah.
that my fear was that I would lose my drive. And it let me just, anyone out there who feels that fear at all, it is not true at all. If anything, it got fucking bigger. It got way bigger. Like, I am way more ambitious than I was. So it's an irrational fear from my experience. Now, what I will share with you is that Kev isn't driven by pain in the way that I am. And the reason why is because he didn't believe in himself. So his childhood was also very
Rough.
not great. Rough,
We'll
yeah.
just use the word rough today.
We'll just use the word rough. And we both came up rough. And I playfully joke with him. I said, dude, if you came from any privilege, like, this never would have worked, because we're the ultimate tryhards. I mean, I haven't taken a full day off in 10 years. So I always say this: if you're humble and you have work ethic and you really want to learn and earn your way to success and fulfillment, you're going to love us. You're going to love the company. You're going to love what we do. If you have any entitlement or privilege, you're just going to freaking hate me, because I'm so earn it. It's not even funny.
And that's also why you can have so many people do the same thing, because they're going to go at it so many different ways.
I think some
Yeah.
people have this inflated sort of self-worth that they think they deserve things, and I think that that's a losing strategy. I think if you want big
yes.
rewards for minimal effort, I think long-term you're in trouble. But anyways, so to answer your original question, yes, it drove the hell out of me. It still does. However, the best way I describe it is I said this to Kev. I said, never take off the chip. We have chips on our shoulder, and anyone who knows us long-term knows that. But the difference is the chip doesn't drive us. We drive the chip. And that we're men now. We're not boys. So I make sure that I don't take the chip off. It's a part of me. But I drive it now, and it doesn't drive me.
So it's
And I don't-
almost like you've converted that wooden chip to a computer chip that you use for your benefit instead
Yeah.
of the other way around.
That's a good metaphor, I think, for what therapy and coaching can do, particularly therapy, because I've reprogrammed a lot of my trauma into a very constructive drive that helps me become the best version of myself. Yeah.
Good, good. Do you think if you hadn't gone to therapy that you would be where you are right now?
Hell no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
One of the best things I've ever done was therapy. I always say this: if you want a therapist, you probably need a coach. And if you want a coach, you probably need a therapist. I had dozens of mentors and coaches, millionaires, 1 billionaire. I needed therapy.
Yeah.
Kevin wanted
Get
a
it all.
therapist. He needed a coach. And the only
You
difference
needed
between
a
coaching
coach.
and therapy is about your relationship with yourself.
Right.
Coaching is about success and achievement. And for me,
Right.
success and achievement was always natural. My relationship with myself is what needed work. Kev had a good relationship with himself for the most part, but he didn't know how to succeed. He didn't know how to achieve. He didn't know how to reverse engineer and metrics and habits and skills and all that stuff. So
Oh,
I was
yeah.
his coach and his mentor, and he's been a good friend to me in the emotional side.
Good, good. And I think that's important, Everybody needs to have somebody who's there to help support them and keep them in check and make sure that they're using their emotions, because sometimes you get so focused on what you're doing, you forget the reason why you're doing it, so to speak. And you've got to keep looking back into yourself to do that. And it's like, okay, I remember why. I'm not a machine, even though I want to be a machine. I just keep going. I'm still a human, and I need to keep that human side inside of me.
Definitely.
And so your podcast, you've got a new name. And so do you have courses that come also with a podcast? You do your podcast, but you have courses on the side. What's the whole picture that we're looking at here?
So Next Level U, again, nextleveluniverse.com. This is all on the website. Next Level University is the podcast, and then Next Level Universe is all the stuff. So we
Okay.
have online courses that are free. We have a group coaching program that we've been doing for 3 years now, 16 groups. So 4 times 3, yeah. So actually 4 years now. So our 16th group is graduating at the end of this month, actually.
Nice.
We have a journal called the Next Level Dreamliner that helps you reverse engineer your dreams. Like I said, I don't want this to end up being a pitch fest.
No, but talk about what you have because people will want to know if this is something that they need. And as entrepreneurs, we do learn from each other. We need the coaches, we need the mentors. And if you've got something that's going to help another entrepreneur get to where they need to go, or even get them to think just by what you're saying, and it's like, oh, well, maybe I need to look into that more. And even though you may not be the specific one for them, they may, just because you mentioned it, they may say, all right, I do need to do this. Maybe I want to just see what's around me first, who is local to me, or who do I already know that might do this. And I just never thought of working with them on that level.
Well, we have everything from
Excuse me.
monthly meetups every month for free. We just crossed 36, so 3 years of that. They're totally free. They're virtual on Zoom. We have a book club that I've been doing for almost 4 years. We're reading a book called The Art of Thinking Clearly. It's over there.
Yeah, it's a good one.
You've read it?
I haven't. It's still on the list to do. Right now, I'm
Okay.
going through Secrets of a Millionaire Mindset. Is that the
Dean
name of it?
Graziosi. Dean
Secrets of the
Graziosi.
Millionaire Mind with T. Harv Eker.
Oh, okay,
I'm
nice.
also going through some Jim Rohn right now and some Bob
Nice.
Proctor.
Nice.
Whole different way of thinking that I didn't even know was available, anything like that. Um, so there is a whole lot that's out there. And the one thing that I think of is where did everybody get their information from? I mean, if I'm looking at 10 books, but their main source was Napoleon Hill's book,
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich, well, then I'm going to go to that book. If they have different sources, then that's something else. But if they all have a similar source, and I used to do this when I looked at websites, when I was searching out information, did a lot of genealogy, a lot of research, and even when I was finally getting my associate's degree, one of the things we had to do was know where our sources came from. So if everybody was saying the same thing, it's like, well, why are they all saying the same thing? Obviously, they didn't come up with it, or were they the ones that came up with it? So, you dig a little deeper and it's like, okay, is where the source came from. And some of them, maybe just worded it in their own words, but it's still there. But you go to the main source and you actually get um, the better perspective, I think, of what everybody else is saying. And when I did my papers or, when I set up my website for genealogy or whatever it was, I always cited where the main source came from because I didn't want to take credit for somebody else's work. But if I used it a lot, I put how I used it, why I used it, but this is where I originally got the information from.
The internet has made that much more challenging, but when you do
It is
study,
now, yeah.
when you read, at this stage, I probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of self improvement books, peak performance,
Mhm.
productivity, business. You do start to connect the dots of where it all sort of came from. And there's different generations of the self improvement
Oh,
space. You've got the
yeah.
Jim Rohn, the Og Mandino, the Bob Proctor, then you've got like the Tony Robbins, Darren Hardy era, then with Oprah's in there kind of, and then you can study, to your point, the genealogy of self improvement and Jim Rohn, and really what's cool about doing that research and then also applying this stuff
Mhm.
is you start to realize the fundamentals that matter and then
Right.
the tips and tricks that are just stupid, and you can kind of filter out some of the stuff that doesn't really matter. And then the stuff that really is super, super, super important. And hopefully you can do that young, because then you can really ignite the compound effect of the fundamentals. But
Are you saying don't wait to be my age to start? No, I'm kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Yeah, I know. Better late than never. I think,
That's right.
I didn't find self-improvement, like really go all in on self-improvement until 26. And I feel like that was late, but I know some people that didn't start till they were 50. So
Yeah,
wherever you are, start there, right?
that's right.
However,
That's right.
to answer your original question though, NLU is a place where you can learn how to reach your own unique potential. And what makes it unique is the self-awareness first, the self-acceptance second, and the self-improvement third. It's not just professional development, it's personal development and knowledge, skills, attitude, mindset. It's all curated from all the different sources, but put into a simple package that helps you really build your self-belief and your self-worth. And
Right.
it maximizes the probability that you achieve both success externally and fulfillment internally. That's really our bread and butter, and it's holistic. Most companies are not holistic. Like Jim Rohn is really good for wealth and business, but you're not going to learn health from Jim Rohn, in my opinion.
Right. Right.
And he certainly didn't lead by example in that when it comes to fitness. So
Right.
I think it's important to lead by example, and NLU is a place that you can get a lot of it. Yeah.
I think it's really important that you talk about starting with what's inside of you. And one thing I have learned on my podcast, having guests all the time, is listening to their stories. The ones who say, yeah, I made millions and then I lost it. I did it again and then I lost it. And it wasn't until I figured out what was going on in here, what was going on in here. Once I got those straightened out, then it was not a problem. I knew what to do. I knew how to keep it. I knew how to build out. I knew about vesting and all this other things like that. And so I think it's real important that you bring up that you start with self first, because if you haven't got this in here figured out, eventually it's going to come out, and you don't want it to come out, because it usually comes out in a not a good way. I'm not going to say that it's bad or harmful or anything like that. It's just doesn't seem to be that it comes out in a good way. And so when you fix that, then okay, let's go to the next one. I'm ready to go.
Well, it's the simplest idea in the world, but it's so powerful, which is you can try to improve the people, places, things, and ideas outside of you.
Right.
But, if I change my mom or I change my aunt or I change my uncle, it's not going to change that much for me.
Right.
But if I change me, I can influence all those people in a more positive
You can
direction.
change the
and so
world.
the inside out approach is so much more powerful. And before 26, before my car accident, I was much more professionally developed and achievement oriented. In corporate, I rose very quickly. But it was about external results more than internal personal development. And so self-improvement and personal responsibility, as selfish as other people might see those things as, like going to the gym for 3 hours, it appears selfish to your friends and family for whatever reason. But the truth is that when you work on yourself, whether people admit this to you or not, that you are a leading by example leader in their mind who does have influence. And I think that respect is earned through leading by example. And I think most influence is respect and not necessarily being liked. And that was a hard lesson I had to learn, because as an entrepreneur, I think unconsciously, as someone who lost a lot when he was young in terms of abandonment, my stepdad and his whole family gone and all that,
Right.
I think that I wanted to be liked more than I wanted to be respected. And I realize now that that was a losing game, because in order to be liked, I kind of had to fit in instead of really lean into who I am. And now I don't go for being liked, because that is a losing game for sure.
It is.
But I do
Alan,
try to be the best me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm going to cut you off. I know you've got a tight schedule, and I really hate for this to end. We've got to come back for a part two, please.
I would love to. And thank you so much for respecting my time. I appreciate it. Yes, thank you
All
so
right.
much.
All right. And tell us real quick where we find you again.
Yeah, so nextleveluniverse.com is the website. Next Level University is the podcast. YouTube, all the platforms. You can also Google my name, as pretentious as that might sound. At this point, I'm grateful that I'm on the internet. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social media. And If you do reach out, just please provide context, because obviously we all get a lot of spam.
Yes.
But if you're humble and grateful and you want to earn your way to success and fulfillment, and you're into self-improvement and you want to reach your potential, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. If you aren't humble and you are entitled, please don't reach out, because you're not going to like me anyway.
That's right. All right. Thank you, our audience, for being here. Get a hold of Alan, and we'll see you next time on Wisdom on the Front Porch.
Thank you for joining us today on Wisdom on the Front Porch with your host, Ellis Kirkpatrick. You can find us on our website, wisdomonthefrontporch.com, see previous episodes of the podcast, and view issues of the magazine. Did you know you can submit questions, leave reviews, or suggest topics? You can also tell us where your favorite front porch location is and what it means to you. We hope you gain value and insight from today's or previous talks. We appreciate your support for us so we can continue to provide value and expertise to you and others. Subscribe to Wisdom on the Front Porch magazine and join in next week when we bring you another great insight into the world of entrepreneur culture and lifestyle. Make today a great day. Always believe that something wonderful is going to happen.